I still remember the first time my heart broke. It wasn't a dramatic scene filled with shouting or angry words. It was quiet, subtle, and insidious, the kind of heartbreak that seeps into your soul before you even realize it. My name is Sophia, and this is my story, not one of fairy tale love, but of life's cruel lessons, betrayal, and the long, arduous journey to discover myself. I had always been the kind of girl who believed in magic. The kind of girl who thought that love, like in the stories, could conquer everything. I trusted easily, laughed openly, and gave freely. Maybe that was my flaw, or maybe it was my strength I never knew. All I knew was that I wanted to love and be loved completely, without barriers, without reservations. And then I met him, Ethan. He had a smile that could light up the darkest of rooms and a voice that made you forget your own heartbeat. I fell, perhaps too quickly, perhaps too deeply. He became my everything, my confidant, my joy, my reason for waking up each morning with a smile. We dreamed together, whispered secrets in the night, and planned a future that seemed so tangible I could almost touch it. But life, as I learned, is never as simple as dreams. It started with small things. A missed call, a delayed reply, an unexplained absence. I told myself not to worry, that I was overthinking, that love required patience. But the unease grew like a shadow, lurking in the corners of my mind. Then came the messages I found accidentally, the ones he never meant for me to see. Words of another woman, intimate, tender, familiar in a way that crushed me completely. I didn't know how to process it. My hands shook, my chest ached, and I couldn't breathe. The man I had trusted with my soul had been giving pieces of it to someone else. That night, I sat alone in my darkened room, tears streaming down my face, clutching the pillow as if it could absorb the pain from my heart. I whispered his name over and over, as if calling him could somehow make reality bend back into something bearable. But reality doesn't bend for anyone. Days turned into weeks, and every moment was a reminder of what I had lost. I replayed our conversations, every laugh, every promise, every "I love you," searching desperately for clues I might have missed. Why had he done this? Was it something I said? Something I did? Or was I simply not enough? I started to withdraw from everyone, friends, family, anyone who could ask the wrong question or offer the wrong kind of comfort. I walked through life like a shadow of myself, smiling when expected, laughing when required, but hollow inside. Nights were the worst. Lying awake, I felt the enormity of the betrayal crushing me, suffocating me. My mind was a storm of thoughts I could not escape, memories that stabbed my heart like knives, and a loneliness so deep it was almost physical. I began to question everything. My worth, my choices, my ability to love and be loved. How could someone I trusted so completely turn into a stranger? How could someone who claimed forever suddenly vanish into lies? The pain was not just heartbreak, it was a dismantling of identity. I had built my happiness around someone else, and now the foundation had crumbled beneath me. There were days I wanted to disappear entirely. I walked the streets feeling invisible, letting the world pass me by, my mind clouded with despair. People smiled around me, oblivious to the storm raging inside, and I envied their ignorance. I envied their ability to live without the weight of betrayal pressing down on their hearts. But slowly, amidst the darkness, something began to flicker, a tiny, fragile ember of self-awareness. I realized that while he had taken a part of my heart, he could not take everything. The core of who I was, my soul, my spirit, remained untouchable. And if I could survive the night, I could survive anything. I turned to writing as a lifeline. Each tear became a word, each scream a sentence, each heartbeat a paragraph. I wrote about him, about us, about the pain that consumed me. I wrote letters I would never send, confrontations I would never have. And in those words, I began to find fragments of myself I thought were lost. Therapy, long walks, silent mornings with coffee in hand, each small act became a brick in rebuilding the walls of my life, this time with care and caution, not recklessness. I learned that healing was not linear. Some days were worse than others, and sometimes a memory would reopen wounds I thought had scabbed over. But slowly, the pain became manageable. It became a teacher rather than a tormentor. I also discovered the importance of boundaries, of valuing myself beyond the reflection in someone else's eyes. My life had once revolved around his presence. Now, I began to understand that I could be whole on my own. I discovered new passions, revisited old hobbies, and explored corners of myself that had been overshadowed by love's blinding light. Friendship became a refuge. I reconnected with people who had been sidelined in the pursuit of romance. Genuine laughter, honest conversations, and the warmth of human connection reminded me that not all bonds are transactional. Some people stay, even when life is harsh and messy. Some love without expectation, without judgment, without selfish motives. And these relationships nurtured my spirit, slowly restoring the trust in humanity I had almost abandoned. Months passed, and I began to see the world with new eyes. I was still cautious, still protective of my heart, but I was also open to the possibility of joy, connection, and maybe even love again. The pain of betrayal had carved deep trenches in me, but it had also taught me resilience, empathy, and the value of self-respect. And then, unexpectedly, life brought me a gentle reminder that the world is not entirely cruel. I met someone, not perfect, not flawless, but genuine. Someone who did not need to impress me with grand gestures, but whose kindness, patience, and authenticity spoke louder than any words could. We laughed, we cried, and I found myself opening my heart in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Even as I allowed love to enter again, I knew that the past was a teacher. I carried the scars of my heartbreak with pride, as proof of my survival, proof that I had loved deeply, felt intensely, and endured the unimaginable. Life, I realized, is a series of moments, some joyous, some painful, some fleeting, some eternal. Heartbreak is inevitable, but so is healing. The journey from devastation to self-discovery is arduous, lonely, and painful, but it is also transformative. Today, I am Sophia, a woman who has loved, lost, cried, and healed. I am stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than I was. I embrace my scars, my tears, and my memories, for they are not weaknesses. They are proof of a life fully lived, a heart that dared to feel, and a spirit that refused to break completely. And as I walk forward, each step measured, cautious, yet hopeful, I know one truth. Even when everything you love turns to dust, the heart has the remarkable ability to bloom again, stronger and more resilient than ever before. After the initial shock of betrayal, I entered a period of profound loneliness, a state where time seemed to stretch endlessly and the world felt both too loud and unbearably silent. My name is Sophia, and in this part of my journey, I learned what it truly means to be alone, yet slowly begin to find myself again. I remember walking through the city streets, the crowds moving around me like a tide I could not catch. Faces blurred, laughter sounded distant, and every joyful moment felt like a cruel reminder of the happiness I once had. I realized that being surrounded by people didn't guarantee connection. I could be in a room full of friends and yet feel completely invisible. The nights were worse. Lying in bed, I felt the emptiness pressing against me. Memories of Ethan haunted every corner of my mind, his smile, the warmth of his hand in mine, the sound of his voice whispering promises of forever. I replayed every conversation, every argument, trying desperately to find answers I would never receive. Sleep became a stranger. Dreams were often filled with him, not as he was, but as a symbol of all I had lost. During these lonely days, I began to explore the idea of self-reliance. I had always depended on others for validation, love, and purpose. Now, with the void around me, I had no choice but to face myself. It was terrifying. I confronted fears and insecurities I had long ignored. Was I lovable? Was I strong enough to face the world alone? Did I deserve happiness after so much betrayal? Journaling became my sanctuary. I poured every thought, every tear, every scream onto paper. I wrote letters to Ethan, letters I would never send, expressing my pain, my anger, and my confusion. Writing gave me clarity. It was the first step toward understanding that my suffering did not define me. It was merely a chapter in a much larger story. I also turned to solitary walks in nature. The quiet of the parks, the rustling of leaves, the gentle caress of the wind against my face, these moments reminded me that life continued, regardless of my heartbreak. I began noticing small details, a bird singing in the morning, the smell of rain on the streets, the way sunlight danced through the window. Slowly, these simple observations brought a small sense of calm, reminder that beauty existed even in pain. Therapy became another lifeline. Sitting across from a stranger who listened without judgment, I began unpacking the layers of my grief. I learned to identify patterns in my relationships, to understand my role without taking blame for the actions of others, and to recognize the signs of toxicity and betrayal. It was painful, humbling, and sometimes exhausting, but each session helped me reclaim a piece of myself I had lost. During this period, I also faced moments of doubt and temptation. The urge to numb the pain was strong, late nights scrolling through social media, seeking validation, comparing myself to others, or even considering fleeting distractions that promised temporary relief. But I resisted. I reminded myself that healing was not instant. It was a slow, deliberate process. I chose actions that nurtured my growth rather than ones that deepened the wound. Friendship began to resurface as a crucial part of my recovery. I reconnected with old friends who had been sidelined by my obsession with love. Their presence was a balm to my wounded spirit. Laughter became a medicine I had almost forgotten, and shared experiences reminded me that genuine human connection could exist without betrayal or deceit. I learned to discern between those who sought my company for selfish reasons and those who truly valued my presence, and this discernment became a key part of my growth. Music, too, became a refuge. I would spend hours listening to songs that mirrored my pain, letting the lyrics voice what I could not. Sometimes, the songs made me weep uncontrollably. Other times, they gave me a strange sense of companionship, as if someone, somewhere, had felt the exact same heartbreak and survived. Slowly, the music transformed from a mirror of sorrow into a guide toward resilience. One of the most profound realizations during this period was the understanding of vulnerability. I had always believed that showing emotion, admitting pain, or asking for help was a weakness. But loneliness taught me otherwise. True strength, I learned, is not in hiding the tears, but in facing them, in acknowledging your pain, and in giving yourself permission to heal. I also explored my passions in ways I had neglected before. Art, writing, photography, and even volunteering became part of my daily life. Each act of creation or contribution reminded me that I was capable of more than heartbreak, that my identity was not defined by loss, but by the choices I made, the courage I displayed, and the love I could still give to myself and to the world. Yet, healing was never linear. Some days, a single memory or unexpected message could drag me back into despair. I cried in silence, sometimes in public, sometimes in locked rooms, but gradually, I began noticing that the intensity of the grief was fading. Pain remained, yes, but it became more manageable, more like a scar than an open wound. As months passed, I ventured back into social life with cautious hope. I attended gatherings, met new people, and slowly allowed myself to trust again. It was terrifying. Every smile, every kind word, every moment of connection was a test of my courage. But with each positive experience, my confidence grew. I began to understand that the world was not only capable of betrayal, it was also capable of kindness, warmth, and genuine love. This period of solitude and reflection also taught me the importance of boundaries. I learned to say no, to protect my emotional space, and to value my time and energy. I realized that self-respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship, romantic, platonic, or familial. Without it, love becomes fragile and easily broken. By the end of this chapter, I could walk through life carrying my heartbreak without being consumed by it. I was still wounded, yes, but I was also growing stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. I began to reclaim my identity, understanding that my worth was intrinsic, not dependent on anyone else's approval or affection. Through loneliness, reflection, and intentional growth, I discovered a fundamental truth. Even in the depths of despair, you can find your way back to yourself. Healing is not about forgetting or erasing pain. It is about integrating it, learning from it, and allowing it to shape you into a stronger, more compassionate person. And in this new awareness, I found a glimmer of hope, a quiet, persistent light that promised that one day, joy, love, and connection would return to my life. Not in the same form as before, not in the same illusions, but in a real, grounded, and authentic way. I had survived the first wave of heartbreak. I had endured the nights of tears, the lonely days, the suffocating despair. And in surviving, I had learned the first lesson of resilience. Your heart may break, but it can still beat with purpose, courage, and hope. Even after months of reflection, healing, and solitude, life has a way of testing the strength we think we have built. I am Sophia, and this chapter of my life taught me that even when you think you've learned to protect your heart, betrayal can appear in forms you never anticipate. I had begun to rebuild my life with care, slowly allowing moments of joy, laughter, and even love to enter again. I met people who seemed genuine, kind, and trustworthy. I was cautious, yes, but I believed in the possibility of connection. I allowed myself to feel again, to laugh again, to hope. Then came the subtle signs, almost imperceptible at first. Little lies, small omissions, a cold glance here, a hidden text there. My intuition whispered warnings, but I wanted to trust, desperately. I wanted to believe in the good, to hold on to the possibility of authenticity in a world that had shown me so much deceit. And yet, betrayal does not always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it creeps in quiet, insidious, like a shadow across your soul. I discovered that even those closest to you, those you love and respect, can falter. They can disappoint, abandon, or mislead, and when they do, the pain is magnified because it comes from a place you never expected. One evening, a message arrived that shattered the fragile peace I had constructed. It was from someone I trusted, a person I considered a friend, someone I confided in, someone who had witnessed my vulnerability firsthand. Their words were not just lies, they were manipulations, distortions of truth designed to serve their own agenda. I felt the familiar ache of heartbreak return, but this time it was layered with a bitter tang of disbelief and anger. How could someone who claimed to care for me so deeply use my trust against me? How could they twist moments of friendship, loyalty, and openness into a tool for their own gain? I sat in my room, clutching the phone as if the weight of its betrayal could crush me entirely. Tears fell silently, rage simmered beneath the surface, and my mind spun in circles trying to make sense of it all. In those hours, I realized something. The world is not always fair, people are not always kind, and even the purest intentions can be met with cruelty. Yet, in that darkness, I found clarity. Betrayal, as painful as it is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of others' choices, their limitations, and their inability to match the trust you offer. I began to understand that protecting my heart does not mean building walls around it forever. It means discerning carefully whom to let in and how much to share. The next weeks were difficult. I questioned my judgment, my instincts, even my ability to trust again. But slowly, I returned to the practices that had saved me before: journaling, walks, music, art, and the quiet companionship of introspection. I reminded myself daily, pain is temporary, but wisdom endures. During this period, I also learned the value of forgiveness, not for those who had hurt me, but for myself. Holding on to anger, resentment, or a desire for revenge only anchored me to the past. By choosing to forgive, I freed myself from the chains of bitterness, allowing my heart to breathe, to heal, and to open again. And yet, healing does not erase memory. Each scar remains a reminder of lessons learned. I learned to recognize red flags, to listen to my intuition, and to honor my emotional needs without compromise. I learned that trust is a gift, not a given, and that those who respect it are rare and precious. By the end of this chapter, I had rebuilt another layer of resilience. My heart, though battered, was no longer fragile in fear, it was strong in wisdom. I began to see betrayal not as a curse, but as a teacher, guiding me to clarity, to discernment, and to a deeper understanding of human nature. Through pain, reflection, and conscious growth, I discovered that heartbreak, when navigated with awareness and courage, can transform into a source of inner strength. It taught me patience, empathy, and the courage to protect myself while remaining open to life's possibilities. As I walked through the city streets one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of pink and gold, I realized something profound. Life is not measured by the betrayals we endure, but by the grace with which we rise after them. And I, Sophia, was determined to rise again and again until my heart no longer trembled at the thought of love, connection, or vulnerability. After surviving betrayal and heartbreak, life often leaves you standing at a crossroads. You can choose bitterness, resignation, or, if you are brave enough, growth. I am Sophia, and in this chapter, I discovered the fragile, tender beginnings of hope as I slowly reclaimed myself from the ruins of heartbreak. The months after betrayal had been an intricate dance between despair and self-preservation. I had learned to walk alone, to silence the inner voice that screamed for validation, to embrace solitude without feeling abandoned. And yet, solitude is not synonymous with emptiness. It is a space where the soul learns to breathe, to examine its wounds, and to grow stronger. I began to immerse myself in creative pursuits. Writing had always been a refuge, but now it became an exploration of my inner world, a mirror reflecting my pain, my desires, and my untapped potential. I filled journal after journal with thoughts, sketches, poems, and letters to no one in particular. Each word, each line, was a step toward reclaiming my voice and asserting my presence in the world. Art became another sanctuary. Painting, photography, and even small crafts allowed me to express emotions too complex for words alone. Colors, textures, and shapes became my companions. Each brushstroke or captured frame was a silent testament to survival, to resilience, to the fact that I was still here, still breathing, still capable of feeling deeply despite the wounds inflicted upon me. I also ventured into new social experiences cautiously. I met people who were authentic, kind, and interesting. I laughed, shared, and allowed myself to feel connection without giving away the core of my heart. Through these interactions, I began to understand that not all people are deceitful. There are souls in the world who are genuine, who love without manipulation, and who respect boundaries. Nature played a profound role in my healing. Long walks in quiet parks, the sound of waves against rocks, and the whisper of the wind through trees became meditative experiences. I learned to find solace in the small details, the pattern of sunlight through leaves, the distant call of birds, the gentle hush of evenings settling over the city. These moments reminded me that life is larger than heartbreak and beauty exists even in the shadow of pain. Therapy continued to guide me. I confronted deep-seated fears, insecurities, and doubts. I examined past patterns of dependency, attachment, and self-neglect. Each session brought insights and revelations, helping me untangle the knots of emotional trauma and teaching me the skills to cultivate self-love, boundaries, and resilience. During this period, I also faced moments of temptation and regression. Loneliness sometimes whispered false promises, temporary distractions that offered momentary relief from pain. I resisted, learning that healing requires patience, self-discipline, and the courage to face your own heart honestly. As weeks turned into months, I noticed subtle shifts within myself. My laughter returned, tentative at first, then more confident. My sleep became restful again, and the nights no longer felt suffocating. Memories of betrayal still lingered, but their sting had dulled. They were no longer defining me. They were teachers guiding me toward greater understanding and empathy. One of the most important realizations was that self-worth is intrinsic. No external validation, relationship, or approval could replace the value I found in myself. I learned to celebrate small victories, honor my boundaries, and nurture my passions without apology. This internal foundation became a shield, allowing me to engage with life without fear of being completely shattered again. Then, unexpectedly, a new chapter began. I met someone, not through serendipity or grand gestures, but in quiet, organic ways. His presence was calming, respectful, and patient. He didn't rush me or demand affection. Instead, he offered genuine companionship, a listening ear, and shared experiences. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen, understood, and accepted without conditions. This relationship taught me the subtle art of trust, not naive trust, but informed, mindful trust. I learned to balance openness with caution, vulnerability with discernment. I began to understand that love is not about losing yourself, but about finding a partner who respects your wholeness while offering theirs in return. Even as I allowed hope and affection to enter my life, I remained aware of my journey. The scars of betrayal and heartbreak were still present, yet they no longer dictated my actions or defined my identity. They were reminders of resilience, courage, and the capacity to love deeply despite the risks. I also learned that growth often comes through reflection and solitude. Meditation, journaling, and quiet introspection became daily rituals. I discovered that happiness is not a destination but a practice, an ongoing effort to nurture oneself, maintain boundaries, and embrace both joy and sorrow with grace. By the end of this chapter, I was no longer merely surviving. I was living intentionally. I had reclaimed my sense of purpose, reconnected with my passions, and embraced a vision of life filled with possibility. The pain of heartbreak had transformed from a burden into a source of wisdom, strength, and self-awareness. And as I walked through the city one evening, watching the sun set in a cascade of gold and crimson, I realized that the first glimmers of hope are often quiet and understated. They appear in moments of stillness, in subtle acts of self-love, in the realization that life continues, and that joy, connection, and fulfillment are not only possible, they are awaiting those who dare to heal. I had survived betrayal. I had endured loneliness. I had confronted the deepest parts of my heart and soul. And now I stood ready to embrace life again, not with naivety, but with clarity, courage, and an unwavering commitment to honor my own heart. By the time I reached this part of my journey, I was no longer the same girl who had trembled under the weight of betrayal and heartbreak. I am Sophia, and in this chapter, I learned what it truly means to embrace self-love, to honor your own heart, and to find strength in your scars. Healing is rarely a straight path. There were days of clarity, when I felt almost invincible, and there were nights of quiet despair, when memories of loss returned with relentless intensity. But gradually, I began to understand that healing is not about perfection or erasing pain. It is about integration, about weaving your experiences into the fabric of who you are. I started each morning with rituals that reminded me of my value. Simple acts, making coffee, journaling, a brief meditation, became anchors for my day. I treated myself with kindness, patience, and respect, refusing to allow the ghosts of my past to dictate my present. Therapy continued to be a guiding light. I confronted lingering fears of abandonment, insecurity, and rejection. I learned tools to manage anxiety and intrusive thoughts, and I practiced setting clear boundaries with everyone in my life. These sessions reminded me that my voice matters, my feelings are valid, and my heart deserves protection as well as nurturing. During this time, I also explored creative outlets more deeply. Writing became more than a release, it became a celebration of survival. I penned essays, poems, and reflections that captured both my pain and my growth. Painting, photography, and music allowed me to express the complexity of emotions that words sometimes could not contain. These forms of creation became a mirror reflecting not the wounds themselves, but the resilience and courage that had allowed me to endure them. I revisited friendships I had neglected and formed new connections grounded in honesty, trust, and mutual respect. I began to see that relationships, whether romantic or platonic, flourish when nurtured with transparency and authenticity. I learned to give love without losing myself, to care without sacrificing my boundaries, and to celebrate others without needing their validation. Self-love, I discovered, was not a destination but a practice. It required daily effort, mindfulness, and reflection. It meant saying no to people and situations that drained me, choosing solitude when needed, and honoring my needs without guilt. It meant acknowledging that my worth is inherent, not dependent on anyone else's perception or approval. This period also involved confronting lingering regrets. I wrote letters to people who had hurt me, not to send, but to release the grip of resentment. I reflected on the decisions I had made, understanding that every mistake, every misstep, had been a lesson guiding me toward greater wisdom. Forgiveness became a gift I gave myself, freeing my heart from the chains of anger and bitterness. During quiet moments of introspection, I noticed a subtle shift within me. The constant ache of loneliness had softened. Laughter returned more easily, joy felt less fleeting, and hope began to take root. I realized that healing is not the absence of pain, but the ability to move forward despite it. Love, I learned, is not something to chase recklessly. It is not about losing yourself in another person or seeking completion from someone else. True love, whether for another or for oneself, is grounded in respect, patience, and mutual care. I began to understand that the strongest love is the one that allows both hearts to grow independently while nurturing connection. One evening, as I walked through a quiet park, the sky painted in shades of amber and rose, I felt a profound sense of peace. The wind carried the scent of blooming flowers, the distant laughter of children echoed faintly, and the world seemed to whisper a gentle truth. You have survived, you have endured, and you have grown. I realized that my heartbreaks, betrayals, and lonely nights were not failures. They were catalysts for growth. They had forced me to confront my vulnerabilities, to examine my choices, and to reclaim my identity. The pain had shaped me, but it had not defined me. My heart, though scarred, was resilient, capable of love, hope, and courage. By the end of this chapter, I was not only surviving, I was thriving. I had discovered the immense power of self-love, the beauty of authentic connection, and the importance of protecting my heart while remaining open to life's possibilities. I knew that life would continue to present challenges, but I also knew that I now possessed the inner strength to face them with grace, resilience, and unwavering courage. As I closed my journal that night, I whispered to myself, "Sophia, you are enough. You are worthy. You are whole." For the first time in a long while, these words felt true, not aspirational, not conditional, but deeply, undeniably true. By the time I reached this chapter, I had endured more than I ever imagined possible. I am Sophia, and this is the part of my journey where heartbreak transformed into profound self-awareness, resilience, and the acceptance of life in all its complexities. The scars of betrayal and loneliness were still present, but they no longer dictated my thoughts or actions. Each scar was a story, a lesson, a reminder that I had survived the storm and emerged stronger on the other side. I realized that pain is temporary, but the wisdom it imparts is eternal. Acceptance was my first step toward true freedom. I accepted the things I could not change, past mistakes, the actions of others, and the unpredictable nature of life. I stopped replaying conversations, analyzing every detail, and questioning my worth. Instead, I focused on what I could control: my reactions, my choices, and my capacity to love and nurture myself. Self-growth became a daily practice. I set goals that nurtured my mind, body, and soul. I committed to learning, to exploring new hobbies, to connecting with others authentically, and to expanding my worldview. Each day, no matter how small, I took deliberate steps toward becoming the person I aspired to be: strong, compassionate, and fully present. The lessons of heartbreak taught me discernment. I became more selective with my trust, cautious with my heart, but never closed off entirely. I learned that vulnerability is not weakness, it is courage. Allowing myself to feel deeply, to connect authentically, and to love without reservation was no longer something to fear. It was a choice I made consciously, with awareness and care. During this period, I also explored the power of gratitude. I began documenting moments of joy, kindness, and beauty in my life. Small gestures: a smile from a stranger, a warm cup of coffee, a supportive friend, became anchors of positivity that reminded me of life's richness beyond pain. Gratitude helped me shift my perspective from loss to abundance, from despair to hope. Love, in its purest form, returned gradually. I met someone who was not perfect, but whose presence was steady, reassuring, and genuine. We laughed, shared, and supported each other, and I felt the possibility of love without fear, manipulation, or dependency. I learned that true connection is built on mutual respect, trust, and the freedom to grow individually while nurturing each other's hearts. Even as I embraced love again, I remained deeply aware of my own boundaries. I understood that my worth did not depend on another person's validation, and that my happiness was not contingent on external circumstances. I could be complete on my own, and that completeness allowed me to engage with the world authentically and without compromise. Reflection became a key part of my growth. I revisited my journey from the first heartbreak to betrayal, loneliness, and gradual healing. I observed the evolution of my heart, noting how pain had shaped my empathy, resilience, and emotional intelligence. I realized that every tear, every sleepless night, and every moment of despair had contributed to the depth and richness of who I had become. I also embraced the concept of impermanence. Life is fluid, unpredictable, and ever-changing. I learned to cherish moments of joy without clinging to them, to honor sorrow without letting it define me, and to navigate uncertainty with grace. This understanding brought a profound sense of peace, a recognition that life, in all its complexity, is worth embracing fully. By the end of this chapter, I had reached a state of balance and empowerment. I was no longer defined by past heartbreaks or betrayals. Instead, I was defined by my capacity to heal, to love, and to grow. I had discovered the profound truth that our hearts are resilient, capable of enduring immense pain, and still capable of profound love and connection. Walking through the quiet streets one evening, feeling the cool breeze, and watching the sun dip below the horizon, I understood something deeply. Life is not about avoiding heartbreak or pain. It is about navigating it with courage, embracing the lessons it offers, and allowing yourself to bloom again, stronger and wiser than before. I am Sophia, a woman who has loved deeply, endured betrayal, faced loneliness, and yet found the strength to rise each time. My heart bears scars, yes, but those scars are symbols of courage, resilience, and the unwavering capacity to hope, love, and embrace life fully. And as I take each step forward, I know this truth. The heart, though fragile, is unbreakable when it learns to trust itself, honor its journey, and embrace life with courage and compassion. By now, I had traveled a journey that few could understand fully. I am Sophia, and this is the final chapter of my story, a story of heartbreak, betrayal, loneliness, and ultimately, resilience, self-love, and hope. Emerging from the depths of emotional despair, I found that true healing is not a single moment. It is a continuous process of choice, reflection, and courage. Each day, I woke with an awareness of my growth, the lessons of the past, and the possibilities that awaited me. The scars of betrayal were still etched into my memory, yet they no longer held dominion over me. I had learned that the past could teach, guide, and strengthen, but it could not imprison the heart that chooses to rise. Pain had been my reluctant teacher, shaping my empathy, resilience, and emotional intelligence. Self-love became the cornerstone of my life. I nurtured my body, mind, and soul with care, refusing to sacrifice my well-being for the approval or attention of others. I celebrated small victories, moments of clarity, courage, and authenticity, and allowed myself to feel joy fully, without guilt or hesitation. During this time, I also deepened my relationships with those who had proven themselves genuine. Friendship, trust, and connection became sacred, and I invested in bonds that reflected mutual respect and understanding. I understood that true love, whether romantic, platonic, or familial, is built on authenticity, compassion, and the willingness to honor one another's boundaries. I explored the world with curiosity and wonder, seeking experiences that nourished my soul. Traveling, learning, creating, and sharing became acts of reclaiming my life. I discovered that fulfillment is not found solely in love or validation from others, but in living intentionally, pursuing passions, and embracing the beauty that surrounds us. In matters of the heart, I became wiser. Vulnerability no longer equated to weakness. It was a conscious choice to engage fully while maintaining self-respect. Trust was extended with care, affection expressed without fear, and love offered without expectation of perfection. I learned to balance openness with discernment, hope with realism, and passion with patience. The lessons of heartbreak resonated deeply. Life is impermanent, people are flawed, and pain is inevitable, but so is growth, joy, and connection. Each heartbreak had been a crucible, refining my character, deepening my emotional awareness, and revealing the strength I had always possessed, but had not yet fully realized. I also learned the importance of gratitude and mindfulness. Noticing the beauty in small moments, a bird in flight, the warmth of sunlight, the laughter of friends, became daily practices that anchored me in the present. I celebrated the ordinary, recognizing that life's richness often resides in simplicity. As I walked through quiet streets, observing the world with newfound clarity, I felt a profound sense of renewal. The girl who once trembled under the weight of loss and betrayal had transformed into a woman who could face life with courage, compassion, and joy. My heart, though scarred, was capable of boundless love for myself, for others, and for the life I was building. I realized that the triumph of the heart is not measured by the absence of pain, but by the courage to continue loving, trusting, and hoping despite it. Every challenge, every tear, Every sleepless night had strengthened my capacity to embrace life fully, to nurture relationships meaningfully, and to honor my own journey. In the quiet of the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with shades of gold and crimson, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I had faced the darkest nights of despair, survived the storms of betrayal, and emerged with a heart that was both resilient and tender. I knew that life would continue to present challenges, but I also knew that I possessed the inner strength to navigate them with grace, courage, and unwavering self-respect. I had discovered that my value, my joy, and my capacity to love are not contingent upon others. They reside within me, eternal and unshakable. By the end of this journey, I understood a profound truth. The heart, though it may break, is never truly defeated. Each fracture becomes a testament to survival, each scar a symbol of courage, and each moment of vulnerability an opportunity for growth. Life's beauty is amplified by its challenges, and love's depth is magnified by its trials. I am Sophia, a woman who has known heartbreak, betrayal, and loneliness, yet I stand stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than ever before. My heart has endured, healed, and blossomed. And as I continue my journey, I carry with me the knowledge that true resilience is born in adversity. True love is cultivated through trust and authenticity, and the human spirit is capable of infinite renewal. The past has shaped me, the present sustains me, and the future invites me to love, create, and live fully. I am no longer afraid of heartbreak, for I know that even if the heart breaks again, it can heal, grow, and love again, stronger and more beautifully than before.